Not too long ago, a group of second graders were asked a series of questions about their mothers. Here are a few samples of some of their wisdom. Why did God make mothers? To help us out of there when we were getting born. How did God make mothers? Well, God made moms just the same as us, except he just used bigger parts. What kind of little girl was your mom? I don't know because I wasn't there, but I'd say she was probably bossy. What did mom need to know about your dad before she married him? Well, the first thing was his last name, and then did he say no to drugs and yes to chores? Why did your mother marry your dad? Well, my grandma says that mom didn't have her thinking cap on when she accepted. What does your mom do in her spare time? What spare time? She doesn't have any. If you could change one thing about your mom, what would that be? She's got this weird thing about me keeping my room clean. She could get that go and be rid of that. How many of you happen to remember Art Linkletter with kids say the darndest things? Yeah, I know I'm dating myself there, but when I read those short answers, it just reminded me of that old show from the 50s. Not too long ago, I was sharing with a friend that I was giving the Mother's Day lesson. She laughed when she heard my title and asked what I was going to share. And the title was Humble and Kind. I told her of my visions for the lesson, and she became very serious. Not everyone had a great experience with their mom, Eileen. It's hard to give a Mother's Day message. Why is that? Because while Mother's Day can be a very happy and joyous day, it can also be a very sad day, a day of pain and a day of grief for some. Not everyone looks forward to Mother's Day. Maybe you've recently lost your mother and you're experiencing the pain of your loss. Or maybe you've lost a child and your heart grieves on Mother's Day. Maybe you're having difficulty with your mother, or your mother wasn't the ideal mother we like to talk about, and maybe you have bad memories. Maybe you were never able to have children, and Mother's Day isn't a joyous occasion for you. Maybe you never had a real mother and were raised in a foster home or by relatives. Maybe you're a single mom or struggling with your perception of being a good mom to your children. Not everyone's home was the Cleavers or the Brady Bunch or Leave It to Beavers. I know, I dated myself again. Some of you have been raised by wonderful parents, and today I want to express gratitude for all the many sacrifices and the gifts that they have given that has made each of us who we are this day. There isn't a person here today that hasn't been affected by motherhood in one way or another, for good or for bad. Everyone either has a mother, had a mother, is married to a mother, or knows a mother. Did that cover it all? Unfortunately, most mothers, however, never receive the credit they deserve for what they do. Several years ago, I happened to be in Atlanta visiting my niece, and I had the opportunity to go to the Martin Luther King Jr. Historical Park. If you ever go to Atlanta, be sure and take it in. The tour includes the two-story home where King was born. And it's a simple Queen Anne style home built in 1895. It was originally purchased by a Reverend Adam Daniel Williams, who was the pastor of the Ebenezer Baptist Church, for a grand total of $3,500 in the early 1900s. Reverend Williams was the father of Martin Luther King Jr., his mother, Alberta Williams King. As we walked through the home, we were told all kinds of stories about Martin Luther King and his father, the senior. There was a complete, however, lack of stories that were given attention to his mother until we were finally taken into the bedroom upstairs where she had given birth to all three of the King children. And they finally named and mentioned the mother. I was beginning to think that maybe he came into this world totally unassisted based on the stories they told. Absolutely none of the accomplishments of the mother were ever discussed or shared. And so often, mothers are left out in the stories we tell as offsprings. You see, we tend to view mothers as selfless beings who have supported their children, and yet credit is not always given. Dr. Holmes tells us it is wonderful that God has so provided us that when we enter this world, we come through the loving protection of a mother's care, that there is waiting for every newborn babe the comfort and the warmth and the tenderness of a woman's heart who has been filled with a desire to give up herself to that miracle of life for which she has been a part. Each of us was once that miracle of life. It was our mothers who were our first teachers, moms who were our first caretakers. Mothers served as role models for mostly good, but sometimes, unfortunately, a little shaky. They are, however, individuals who give us our first lessons in life. Indeed, they are our teachers. Basketball pro Shaq O'Neal was raised by his mother as a single mom, Lucille O'Neal. The Shaq has commented on his mother and her influence in his life. According to an interview that he gave to ESPN, he stated, "She has always been the one whom I've called the remote control of my life. A lot of times when I'm sitting and not doing anything, she'll call me and say, you know, you need to go to school. You know, you need to get a master's. You know, I don't like what you said on TV. You know, you need to get a doctorate." He added that she was his major role model. At the age of 10, Stephen Colbert's father and his two brothers were killed in a plane accident. It left his mother, Lenora, raised him completely, and he believed she made a major impact on his life. In an interview, he happened to say, "When you watch this show, if you like this show, that's because of everybody who works here, and I'm part of it. But when you watch the show and you also like me, that's because of my mom." Most of us can remember Irma Bombeck. She was an icon for mothers everywhere and was one of the top sources for relatable or relating to parenting content. She stated, or wrote rather, "Someday when children are old enough to understand the logic that motivates a mother, I'm going to tell them I loved you enough to bug you about where you were going, with whom, and what time you would get back." She also wrote, "I loved you enough to be silent and let you discover your friend was a real creep. I loved you enough to make you return a Milky Way with a bite out of it to the drugstore and confess, I stole this. But most of all, I loved you enough to say no when you hated me for it. That was the hardest part of all." Mothers indeed are the great influencers of humanity because of how they raise their children. My mother, Jessie Eileen Brownell, transitioned 18 years ago, and I always reflect upon her on Mother's Day. And as I reflect on her life and her style of being a mother, can recognize now the fine qualities that she had. Notice the word now. I certainly did not recognize those qualities 50 or 60 years ago. Excuse me. Got a little bit of a frog this morning. Interesting how with maturity comes understanding and appreciation. My mom was many things, including a devoted wife, a homemaker, and a great cook. Like many mothers, she was courageous, had a deep strength and a faith that she served as a teacher with great wisdom, and certainly she was an example of forgiveness. My guess is many of you would acknowledge those traits in your mother. I'm going to ask you, what qualities did your mother have? Go ahead, share them. Grace. What else? Patience. Humor. What? Tenacity. Oh, yeah, they do need tenacity. What else? Generous. Compassion. Trust. What? Smart. Faith.
Unconditional love.
Unconditional love. All of those are qualities that guide children into adulthood. And I might add that all of those qualities influence our nation. Born in 1916, my mother was a child of the Depression. That certainly took courage and determination to overcome. Lao Tzu tells us, being deeply loved by someone gives you strength, while loving someone deeply gives you courage. When I think of mothers of courage, I am certainly reminded of Jochebed. She was the mother of Moses. We're told in Exodus how she hid her baby boy, Moses, for the first 3 months of his life. And why? Because he was a Hebrew boy of slaves in Egypt, and she feared for his life. In desperation, when she knew she could not hide him any longer, she took a small ark and she made of acacia wood, and she covered it with pitch and then put the child in it and laid it in the reeds on the river Nile. Ultimately, he was found by the Pharaoh's sister and saved. I can't even imagine a mother having to give up her child. And yet she knew that was the only way to save him. What required courage of you as a mother or your mom when you were growing up? I'm sure you can think of several things. In the revealing word by Charles Fillmore, he defines strength. I'm really sorry, folks. As the energy of God, stability of character. Strength is physical, mental, and spiritual, and that all strength originates in spirit. Frederick Douglass told us it is easier to build strong children than to repair broken ones. Our prisons today are filled with broken men and women, many who never had a chance when they were born. And in my book, it takes mothers with strength to build strong children. How many of you were raised by a single mom? Yes, always. And that took strength then, and it certainly takes strength today. When I was 12 and in the 7th grade, My father was sent to Maine on a temporary position with the Diamond Match for only 6 months. And my mother's mother and dad made the decision that they would stay here in California rather than just moving for 6 months. Ultimately, that temporary position became 9 months, and then it was made permanent just before my brother's senior year in high school, and when I still had a year left of braces on my teeth. Rather than moving our family at that time, my parents continued to live apart, with my dad living in a motel room and returning to Chico about every 6 weeks for meetings in California. And that's when an airplane flight was Portland to Boston, to New York, to Chicago, to San Francisco, to Chico. It was an all day or all 24-hour adventure for him to return. And when I look at that situation now, I realized how hard that must have been, not only on my dad, but also on my mom. She was chief cook, shopper, chauffeur, disciplinarian, decision maker, bill payer, and loving parent, to name a few of her many jobs. It reminds me of mothers who are married to servicemen and the challenges they must face when their spouse leaves on active duty for 6 months to a year. It takes strength to be a mother. As I mentioned before, mothers are our first teachers. Patrick Ness wrote, "You do not write your life with words, you write it with actions. What you think is not important. It's only important what you do." As our first teachers, mothers show us what to do. We learn by imitating them. In all of their actions and words, we are provided with examples of what to say and what to do. Now, I don't know about you, but I heard a lot of "do as I say, not as I do," or "because I said so." In fact, there's even a movie by the name of "Because I Said So." A mother's actions and words are always on display. And it is in those actions and words that build the foundation of any child's life. Proverbs 22:6 states, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." In my family, it was always important to be humble and kind. It wasn't what you did for others, but how you did it. It was important to do something with kindness without seeking credit. Both of my parents set that example. Imagine how much humanity would be changed today if kindness and humility were priorities in our interactions with each other. I often wonder what would happen in the Middle East today if mothers were sitting at the negotiation table and helping to make decisions. Mothers are supportive. After working with children for 25 years in recreation, I know that behind every child who believes in themselves is a mother who believed in that child first. At a very early age, I announced my desire to be a minister when I grew up. And in the 1950s, women were not ministers. Eyebrows would raise when my parents would share it, or I would, and I was discouraged by wanting to be that. People would tell me as a woman I could go into Christian education, but I certainly couldn't become a minister. Preaching was not something that women did. No, my parents would say, if she wants to be a minister, she can do it. They never, ever had doubt in their mind. They had faith in me that others didn't. It maybe took me a little bit longer than we thought, but indeed it finally happened. And my deepest regret, however, is that my mother, who believed in me, died 6 months before it became a reality. If you've ever read or studied Native American customs and beliefs, you know how closely they are related to our beliefs in oneness of all life. Native ancestral knowledge emphasizes that all life is sacred. Women, especially, are considered sacred in Native philosophies as they are the giver of life. Without them, humankind cannot replenish itself. The power of women is strong and respected. Much like you and I had mothers who taught us, the Native Americans, regardless of the tribe, believed that mothers teach their children the ways that they should walk their life's journey. Many of their ceremonies were originated by mothers and are attributed to women. Also, many Native American tribes are maternal and adhere to female leadership, advice, and kinship. And to all tribes, however, there is a sacredness of the great giver of life, Mother Earth. As we give thanks and praises to our own mothers, let us do likewise for Mother Earth by giving greater care for it before it becomes too late. Today, I've shared the critical roles that mothers play in our lives. What they do throughout our entire life has a major implication not only on us individually, but on all of humanity. I believe that it is time for us to stop asking mothers to be selfless, and it's time for us to honor their needs. Let us also begin to tell the history of the many acts our mothers have done and give them credit for the success of our own lives. Let us give thanks by telling their untold stories for generations to come. It will honor all that they have given to us for generations yet to be. This is the truth in my life, and this is the truth in yours. And so it is. Amen.